Okay, here is another battle cry scenario. We are going to go with Greenbrier River, West Virginia, October 3rd, 1861. I've got little markers on here to represent the generals, which of course aren't all generals. Reading the notes of the game, you've got Colonel Johnson here, Colonel Rust, Colonel Talaferio, and it didn't tell me Wagner, just the last name, Brigadier General Reynolds, and Colonel Johnson, which I guess I already said. There's Kimball over here as well. So as the game progresses, we'll get to see how well they do, because I'll put little markers to see how many units they kill. This scenario also has green units. These 4 infantry, I put little flags there, are green units, so they'll have to retreat 2 spaces every time they get a retreat on them. I've also got some units from my Napoleon in Europe game because I didn't have enough units. So that artillery there is a Napoleon style. And these infantry units up front here, of course, as well. I had read somewhere that maybe it was in that game, that their elite units had high towering hats to look impressive from across the field and intimidating. So that's what you got there. The Confederates are going to be intimidated. This really is a good looking game. It's going to take 6 flags for victory here. And they each get 5 command cards. The Union gets to go first. And this group here with Colonel Johnson looks like an inviting target. So we'll see what options the Union player has and go from there. So the first action of the game, the Union Army moved every unit in the middle up 1 space. Brigadier General Reynolds moved up into the tree line, keeping a strong defensive position while moving up. The artillery also moved up, and a green unit, shot at Colonel Johnson and eliminated 1 infantry. So now back to the Confederates. So in response to Colonel Johnson getting attacked, Colonel Rust has moved 2 infantry units closer to the front while keeping fire on this infantry unit and eliminating 1, and artillery fire on this infantry unit, defeating 2, taking a little pressure off of Colonel Johnson, who seemed to be a little bit confused in the surprise attack and was unable to flee. The Union Army, with their green units, attempted to move up and put pressure on Colonel Johnson, taking pressure away from these units over here that have already taken a beating. But they could not get any hits. And in response, the Confederates moved Colonel Rust up into the hills, shooting across the river, and Colonel Johnson eliminated these units completely, capturing their first flag. And Colonel Rust's units eliminated 2 infantry and forced a retreat. So the early advantage here goes to the Confederates and their leadership of Colonel Johnson and Colonel Rust. Colonel Kimball, seeing his front line over here collapse, has taken upon himself and taken charge of some green units and moved up to confront Colonel Johnson. However, he moved too quickly and ran out of supplies, forcing them to fall back. And an entire Union turn was wasted. Very little on the front line over here that was just a couple turns ago very strong for the Union. So after the Union debacle, once again, Colonel Rust, attacking across the river, has wiped out another unit, capturing another flag. And Colonel Johnson, shooting at the artillery here, has forced them to retreat. So not much of a front line for the Union over here at all. And the closest units, artillery, that when they moved up, there was lots of infantry here to assist them. The Confederates also moved up back here just to try to add something to the front line on the opposite side of the river. The Union attempted to take a shot at Colonel Rust with the sharpshooter. Of course, sharpshooters of this day and age simply weren't very good, and they missed, losing any initiative that they had back to the Confederates, who, thinking that they had advantage, moved up their units in the center. All their infantry groups moved up and kept their artillery back. Now, I'm not sure, in Memoir 44, I don't think artillery can move into a river. It doesn't state that in what I have here. But again, I'm going to print out the official rules when I get back to work, and we'll see if there's something there. Plus, in Memoir, if you move out, you lose your sandbag positions. These, I'm going to leave them there, and they'll be there when we retreat back to them, should we need to do that. Colonel Johnson shot over here into the trees and forced that infantry to retreat. So now we'll see if the Union can actually make some kind of an attack and get into this war, as they're down 2 flags to nothing. Taking a shot from across the field, the artillery here shot at Colonel Taliaferro, who had just moved up into the river, eliminating 2 infantry, exposing his risky gamble to move up. Colonel Kimball also moved up along with the artillery to get him out of the range of Colonel Johnson. Colonel Rust, not wanting to be outdone by Colonel Johnson, who has not moved since the beginning of the game, despite all the Union units that were around him, Colonel Rust has moved up and shot across the field over the river, eliminating a unit and forcing them to retreat. Of course, a green unit has to retreat twice, but there's nowhere to go. So they have lost 2 units. In a daring attack for the Union, Brigadier General Reynolds forced marched his infantry right up the center in the belly of the beast, where the defenses are strongest for the Confederates. He had a direct attack against Colonel Taliaferro, who lost 2 units, losing his entire group, forcing the general to retreat. The other green units that moved up once again and engaged Colonel Johnson wiped out 2 of their infantry. So he is down to 1 infantry, and it's probably time for him to retreat himself. In an attempt to help Colonel Johnson, some infantry moved up into the river to attack the green Union infantry that have been giving Johnson trouble, eliminating 1 infantry in the process. They also moved their cannons up right on the riverbanks, so they're in much better range at this point. The Union now attempting to make the Confederates pay for, instead of fleeing Colonel Johnson, moving their units up, with artillery fire across the field, knocked out one unit. Once again attacking Colonel Johnson, taking the last unit and killing Colonel Johnson himself for the Union's second flag, and now 2-2. Brigadier General Reynolds shot across the river and killed Colonel Taliaferro. So 2 Confederate generals are dead. One remains, Colonel Rust. My understanding is if you can get all 3, that is game. The Confederates, a little bit pissed off after losing 2 colonels in a matter of minutes, have returned artillery fire across the field, eliminating 1 unit and forcing a retreat. Their infantry also moved out of the river and engaged that unit that killed Colonel Johnson, wiping all 3 of them out, giving the Confederates a 3rd flag. The rebels continue to be pissed off, and 2 different infantry groups who have not had any damage done to them have moved up and engaged Brigadier General Reynolds, along with some artillery fire back here, and it has wiped out the entire unit, giving the Confederates 4 flags and forced General Reynolds to retreat. The Union Army with Colonel Wagner moved everything on their left flank up, moving into the river and engaging the rebels in the river, forcing a retreat that may not be so bad for the rebels as they move right back into their strong defensive position. The Confederates, taking advantage of the Union infantry moving into the river, 2 units moved up and engaged, killing 2 infantry and forcing them to retreat back into the trees. So Brigadier General Reynolds has fled the scene, and Colonel Kimball has moved up in his place, attacking the infantry that has done so much damage, killing 2 of them and forcing them to retreat back into the trees. This Confederate attack may have just taken the wind out of the Union sails as Colonel Rust moved up into the rivers, attacking this artillery and forcing a retreat. They have nowhere to go, so 1 unit is gone. This infantry unit engaged Colonel Kimball and knocked off 2 infantry. And then over on the right flank, this infantry unit attacked the infantry that were in the river. So the attempt of the Union to move into the river has hurt them badly, knocking off 3 infantry. So there's barely even. Colonel Wagner still has 4 infantry. Brigadier General Reynolds is trying to find an infantry group to attach to, and there just isn't one. There's one with 2. And Colonel Kimball in the middle of the field took some damage. The Union Army was able to bombard the Confederates, knocking 2 infantry from Colonel Rust, knocking another one from this infantry unit here, only 1 left, and moving their other artillery into the tree line. The Confederates respond by attacking Colonel Kimball again, hitting 1 infantry and 2 flags, Now I'm not sure with the green unit here what that exactly means in terms of, should it be 4 retreats? 2 for each flag? And actually would kill another infantry? Instead, I'm just taking them all the way back and I'm leaving 1 infantry alive. But this infantry group shot up the river and killed 1 more unit, making it 5 flags for the Confederates. And 6 flags is for the win. In a shocking development, the Union Army got a forced march card, which allowed them to move 2 infantry units up 2 spaces and go after Colonel Rust. Eliminating Colonel Rust would take off every leader on the board for the Confederates, as they already had taken Colonel Taliaferro and Colonel Johnson. And in fact, between the 2 infantry groups, they did eliminate the whole group and the colonel. So that would be a win for the Union. Now I'm going to continue to play this as the Confederates have 1, 2, 3, and 4 infantry groups that have not even lost 1 infantry. So they would seem to have the advantage. But based on taking out the leaders, the Union has won this engagement. All right, I already called the game in favor of the Union, being that they took out Colonel Rust, Colonel Taliaferro, and Colonel Johnson, leaving the Confederates with no leaders on the board. I went ahead and played a couple more rounds just because even though the Confederates seemed to have more strength, the Union was not completely dead. Of course, now they are missing 8 different units, and the very next turn after the Union took the last general, the Confederates took the 6th flag that they would have needed. But now the Union has Colonel Wagner with 4 units and nothing else, or very little. That's it. While the Confederates brought in reinforcements here, they had a unit that was down to just 1 that got 2 more with a medic's card, and they're still fairly strong. So I'm going to call it. I do like the little tags. I might do something a little more solid, like a printout. We'll see what I come up with. In this game, it didn't make much difference. The 1 dice represents the generals that they took out, and that red token with the 1 damage represents units that they took out. And only 1 unit on the entire board that took out 2 was this infantry here that replaced Colonel Johnson in that position at some point in the game. And that was it. So none of the colonels. Colonel Russ took out 1. Johnson took out 1. I'll try to keep them the same next time because I used a different token for that. And that was it. You had some... I didn't keep track after that last general was taken off the board. So that's it. This game is still pretty awesome, and I'll set up for another scenario.